In 2000, a 17-year-old girl, Emma Harris, vanished into thin air from her quiet Texas town. All that was left behind were her shoes and a diary, two simple items that raised terrifying questions about what happened to her. What followed was a 16-year search full of betrayals, lies, and a revelation that no one saw coming. At the time, it seemed impossible. How could someone so close, someone so loved, just disappear without a trace? Emma was a typical teenager, just finishing high school, working part-time at a local gas station, and planning for her future. But that night, something went terribly wrong. It was supposed to be like any other evening. Emma was finishing her shift, planning to walk home like she always did. It was a route she knew well, a route she felt safe on. But that night everything changed. Emma Harris simply vanished. What happened in those quiet, empty streets of her small town? What could have happened to a girl just steps from home, with no one to witness it? Emma's shoes and her diary were discovered, discarded just steps from where she would have walked. Two innocent items that would become the only clues, the only hints at a mystery that would torment her family, her friends, and an entire community for years to come. Before I begin, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments below. I'd love to know just how far this story is reaching. As the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, hope began to fade. But one thing was certain. The case wasn't just a missing person. It was the beginning of something darker. Something that would remain unsolved for 16 long years. The search? Tireless. The rumors? Endless. The lies? Perpetual. What no one could predict, what no one saw coming, was the shocking truth that would finally come to light and shatter everything we thought we knew. So stay with me as we dive into the mystery of Emma Harris. It was a small, peaceful town in Tarrant County, Texas. Summer 2000. The air thick with heat, the kind of heat that settles in your bones and makes everything feel still. The streets empty at night, except for the occasional car passing through. A town where everyone knew each other's names, and safety was never a concern. At least, that's what they thought. But that summer, everything changed. Emma Harris, just 17 years old, lived in this quiet town. A bright, easygoing teenager with a heart full of dreams. She had a part-time job at the local gas station, pumping gas, stocking shelves, and chatting with the occasional late-night customer. It wasn't glamorous, but Emma didn't mind. She liked the independence it gave her. And in her free time, she loved to unwind by listening to 90s pop music, drawing, and reading her favorite books. She was like any other teenager, full of hope, ready to take on the world. Emma's future seemed clear. She was planning to go to college, maybe study something in the arts, and live a life of her own choosing. She had friends, she had family, and she had a life ahead of her. But one fateful evening in late June, all of that came to an abrupt end. Emma had just finished her shift at the gas station. Nothing out of the ordinary. She walked out of the store, slung her bag over her shoulder, and set off on the usual 10-minute walk home. It was a route she knew well, a route she had walked countless times before. But that night was different, and no one knew why. As Emma walked those few final steps, something happened. Something terrifying. In the days following Emma's disappearance, whispers began to circulate. The police were quick to search the town, the surrounding areas, even the nearby lake. But there were no signs of Emma. Only her shoes and her diary, left behind as though she had dropped them in a hurry, abandoned by the side of the road. But it wasn't just the police that were investigating. The rumors started to build. There were whispers about a mysterious older man who had been seen hanging around the gas station where Emma worked. A man who had seemed too interested in Emma, some said. Some even suggested that he was the one who had been watching her for weeks, lurking in the background, waiting for the right moment to strike. Who was this man? Was Emma in danger from someone she knew? Or was it a complete stranger who had targeted her in the dead of night? The questions kept coming. With no real evidence to go on, the police were left with more questions than answers. And then there was Emma's family. Her mother, Grace, a woman of unwavering strength, clung to the belief that her daughter would come home. Her father, Aaron, withdrawn and consumed with grief, became a shell of the man he once was. Emma's younger sister, Lily, tried to hold it all together, but the gaping hole Emma left behind was undeniable. The family was in shock, struggling to understand why their daughter was taken. But as the days turned into weeks, hope began to fade. No one had seen Emma, no one had heard from her, and the town began to move on, though they could never forget the girl who had vanished without a trace. Just a few steps from home, Emma vanished, and no one knew why. Was it a random crime? Or was Emma targeted by someone close to her? The search for answers would reveal shocking truths that no one saw coming. But for now, the question remained: where was Emma Harris? Before we dive deeper into the twists and turns of Emma's case, I want to take a moment to thank each and every one of you amazing subscribers who make it possible for me to keep sharing these stories. Your support means the world, and it's because of you that this channel continues to grow. These true crime stories take hours of research and hard work to bring to life, and if you're enjoying this journey with me, don't forget to like this video to show your support. Hit that subscribe button and join our amazing community of viewers who love to solve mysteries, just like you. And if you know someone who believes that the truth always comes out, share this story with them, because they need to hear it. Oh, and turn on that notification bell so you'll be the first to know every time we drop another chilling must-watch case. Thank you for being part of the adventure. Let's get back to Emma's story. 16 years had passed. 16 years of unanswered questions, broken hearts, and a town still haunted by the disappearance of 17-year-old Emma Harris. The case had gone cold, and for most, Emma's name had become a distant memory. But for those who never stopped hoping, it was a wound that wouldn't heal. In 2016, something incredible happened. A cold case unit, newly formed within the police department, decided to revisit the oldest unsolved cases. Emma's case, now a dusty file in the back of the archives, was pulled out for a fresh set of eyes. Those eyes belonged to Detective Sarah Mitchell. Detective Mitchell wasn't just any investigator. She was known for her relentless pursuit of justice and her ability to pick apart every detail of a case that others might have overlooked. When she took on Emma's case, she wasn't just reopening a file. She was reopening the door to truth. And what she uncovered would change everything. Mitchell dove deep into the case, reviewing everything: the police reports, witness statements, evidence logs, and photos. She studied the timeline, hoping that something, anything, might finally jump out at her. And then she found it. A single contact lens. Sitting there, just inches from where Emma's shoes and diary had been left behind. At first glance, it seemed like a trivial clue. But to Detective Mitchell, it was a goldmine. A single, small piece of evidence that no one else had noticed. The contact lens could mean so much. A lens that had been torn away during a struggle or simply dropped in the chaos of Emma's final moments. Whatever the case, it was the first clue that might lead to the truth. But this wasn't just any ordinary clue. It was the spark that reignited the investigation. With this new lead in hand, Mitchell turned to the cutting-edge forensic technology available in 2016, a far cry from the limited tools they had in 2000. New DNA testing methods, more sophisticated than ever, could now process the tiniest of samples. Samples that had previously been considered too small or degraded to analyze. The contact lens would be analyzed for any traces of Emma's DNA, but Mitchell wasn't stopping there. She sent the tissue samples from under Emma's fingernails, samples that had been preserved in the original evidence bag, for analysis. The question on everyone's mind was, could this DNA lead them to a suspect? As the lab work began, Mitchell could hardly contain her anticipation. She knew this could be the breakthrough they needed to finally bring Emma home, and maybe, just maybe, bring justice to a case that had been buried for far too long. Suspenseful music builds as the scene sets for the next phase of the investigation. DNA testing. The sound of lab equipment whirring in the background adds tension, teasing the audience with the promise of new insights. The new forensic technology was revolutionary, but no one could have predicted what it would reveal. As the investigation gained momentum, Detective Mitchell found herself immersed in the suspense. Was this contact lens the final piece of the puzzle? And what secrets would the DNA samples yield? Mitchell couldn't help but wonder. Would this breakthrough finally reveal the truth about Emma's disappearance? Or would it lead them to a dead end once again? The clock was ticking, and every moment was crucial. Mitchell's team was working tirelessly to get the results back, but for now, all they could do was wait. This was only the beginning, and the twists were only getting started. The wait was almost unbearable. But the next chapter in the search for Emma Harris was about to unfold. And what they would find next would leave everyone stunned. As Detective Sarah Mitchell continued her investigation, the pieces began to fall into place. The breakthrough she had hoped for was finally within reach. The DNA samples from Emma's fingernails, the ones that had been collected all those years ago, had been sent to the lab for testing. The results were in, and they pointed to someone no one had suspected. The DNA wasn't just a random match. It belonged to Danny Carter. Danny Carter, a man who had been a neighbor of the Harris family for years. A man who had been a comforting presence in their darkest days. Danny wasn't just a bystander in this story. He was one of the key players. And now the evidence made it clear. Danny had been a part of Emma's life in ways no one could have ever imagined. The revelation hit hard. Danny Carter had been deeply involved in the search efforts for Emma. He had attended vigils, posted missing flyers, and even comforted the grieving family. To the community, he was a hero, someone who cared, someone who wanted to help. But the truth, as always, was much darker than anyone could have anticipated. Detective Mitchell's heart sank as she pieced together the details. Danny wasn't just a helpful neighbor. He wasn't just a man who wanted to help a family in crisis. No, Danny Carter had been secretly watching Emma for months before her disappearance. He had been obsessed with her in ways that no one could have guessed. The community, which had trusted Danny and admired him for his dedication to the search, was now rocked to its core. This man, this friendly, seemingly kind man, had deceived everyone around him. But what's worse, he had been hiding something far more sinister. Danny had been stalking Emma for months, lurking in the shadows of her life, watching her every move. He had been planning something terrible, and no one had seen the signs. The shock was palpable. How could someone so trusted be the one to cause such pain? How could Danny, who had played such a vital role in the search for Emma, have been the one who took her life? It was a betrayal beyond comprehension. The entire community was stunned. They had opened their hearts to a monster and didn't even know it. But there was something even more chilling. The question lingered in the air, unanswered. Was Danny the only one involved? Or was there something or someone else lurking in the background? As Mitchell continued to unravel the twisted truth, the possibility of a larger conspiracy began to take shape. Was Danny acting alone? Or had he been manipulated by someone else? The more Mitchell dug, the darker the story became. Music cue, a tense, low beat plays in the background, building anticipation as the truth slowly unravels. As the shocking reality set in, it was time for you, the viewer, to pause and reflect. Imagine this. Someone you trust, someone who's been there for you, someone who stood by you during your most desperate moments. Turns out they were the one who caused your pain. The one you relied on for support. The one you thought you could trust with your deepest grief. What would you do if someone you trusted, someone who helped you through your darkest moments, turned out to be the one who caused all your pain? How would you feel? Let me know in the comments below. Would you have suspected Danny? How do you feel about this shocking betrayal? What would you do if you were in the Harris family's shoes? This case wasn't just a tragedy. It was a betrayal that cuts deep. As Detective Mitchell's investigation continues, the walls close in around Danny. But the story isn't over. No, the shocking truth has only just begun to unfold. The day Danny Carter was arrested, it was nothing like anyone imagined. The arrest was cold, calculated, a stark contrast to the warmth he had shown the Harris family just days before. Danny Carter, the man who had offered his help in search parties, the man who had comforted Grace, the man who had spent sleepless nights alongside Emma's parents, was now handcuffed and charged with her murder. The community was left in stunned silence. How could this be the same man who had been a friend, a neighbor, someone they all trusted? The cold metal of the handcuffs, the flashing lights of the police car, it all seemed so surreal. Just days ago, Danny was a beloved figure, his face on flyers, his hands reaching out to help. And now, his face was the one on the police blotter. As he was led into the police car, Danny's expression didn't betray any emotion. He was calm, detached. It felt as if he had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times over in his mind. But for Grace, for Lily, for Aaron, this was the moment that shattered everything. The man they had trusted, the man they had leaned on, was the one responsible for tearing their family apart. Grace Harris, who had stood side by side with Danny during the search for her daughter, was now consumed with grief. Her face, once hopeful and full of desperation, now wore the hollow look of betrayal. How could she reconcile the man who comforted her, who searched for her daughter with her, with the monster who had stolen her child's life? Lily, Emma's younger sister, stood in the background, silent. The girl who once had a sister to confide in, to laugh with, now had only memories of Emma to cling to. Her eyes were filled with disbelief, the weight of the betrayal heavy on her shoulders. How could someone who was supposed to be a hero turn out to be the villain? And Aaron, Emma's father, stood in the doorway, his face expressionless. The pain of losing his daughter had already crushed him, but now the crushing weight of this betrayal, this double-edged loss, was unbearable. His mind couldn't wrap around the truth. Danny, the man who had walked the streets with him, searching for Emma, was now the man who had stolen his daughter's future. Flashbacks begin, contrasting the present arrest with Danny's role in the community. He had been a trusted figure, a neighbor everyone turned to, a man who, at the time, appeared selfless, caring, dedicated to finding the missing girl. There were moments when Danny had been seen comforting people in the church, offering reassuring words to Emma's family as they posted missing flyers. He had even been a part of the neighborhood walks, walking shoulder to shoulder with other volunteers, all in the hopes of finding Emma. But now, as the arrest unfolded, these memories felt like a haunting illusion. All those hours spent searching for Emma, all those hugs, all those moments of kindness, they were nothing more than a mask. A mask he had worn so well, hiding the monster beneath. The community, once united in the search for Emma, was now divided. Shock rippled through the town. Neighbors who once greeted Danny with warm smiles now found themselves recoiling, unsure how to reconcile the person they thought they knew with the murderer now standing in front of them. As the arrest progressed, the emotional fallout spread like wildfire. Grace, Lily, and Aaron were left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. The man who had been by their side, who had helped search for their daughter, was now the one who had taken her away forever. The stark contrast between Danny's participation in the search and his role as the perpetrator left the Harris family grappling with a question that no one could answer. How do you process the unthinkable? How do you move forward when the truth is so much darker than you ever imagined? Music cue. Slow fade out of the emotional music, giving space for reflection. The shock of the arrest was just the beginning. The Harris family had finally found the person responsible for Emma's death, but the emotional toll would take much longer to heal. And for the community, the impact of this betrayal would linger long after the trial was over. Next, we will look at the court case, where the truth would finally be revealed, and the Harris family would have to confront the man who had torn their lives apart. The courtroom battle that would determine Danny Carter's fate had finally begun. What was once a case of a missing teenager had now escalated into a legal fight that would expose years of deception, betrayal, and heartbreak. DNA evidence, witness testimony, and shocking revelations would all come to light, painting a terrifying picture of the man everyone once trusted. The first few days of the trial were a whirlwind of legal arguments and emotional tension. But nothing could prepare the jury for what was about to unfold. As the defense team put up their arguments, trying to downplay the DNA evidence. It was clear that the prosecution was building a case that no one could ignore. Lily Harris, Emma's younger sister, was the first to take the stand. The room was silent as she walked up, her face pale, her hands trembling. She was just a child when Emma vanished, but now, as an adult, she carried the weight of her sister's absence every day. The courtroom fell silent as Lily began to speak. Her voice cracked as she began to recount the memories of her older sister, the girl who had promised to always be there for her. Lily's testimony was emotional, heart-wrenching, and gut-wrenching. She described Danny's unsettling comments about Emma before she disappeared, comments that made her skin crawl when she looked back at them. He would talk about Emma a lot. He would say strange things, Lily said, her voice quivering. He'd say things like, "She's just like her mother, she doesn't know what she wants." Or, "She's so young but she's already too much to handle." I never thought anything of it back then. But now, it chills me to the bone. The courtroom fell into a hushed silence. The audience could feel the tension, the weight of Lily's words sinking in. This wasn't just a young girl recounting childhood memories. This was a sister sharing the disturbing pieces of a puzzle that she had only recently started to understand. But then came the moment that would shake the entire courtroom. Grace Harris, Emma's mother, took the stand. Her eyes were red, and her face carried the weight of years of grief and unanswered questions. She had waited so long for this moment when she could finally speak the truth, when she could finally share what had been buried deep in her heart for so many years. Grace's revelation stunned everyone in the room. Emma was in contact with someone before she disappeared. Grace began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. An older man. She never told me his name, but I could see the change in her. She was nervous. She didn't want to talk about him, but I could tell something wasn't right. The room fell into complete silence. Grace's words hung heavy in the air as everyone realized that this wasn't just about Danny Carter. There was another layer to this story, another twist that no one had anticipated. The idea that Emma had been communicating with someone else, someone older, someone mysterious, cast doubt on everything the jury had thought they knew. The defense team immediately jumped on the revelation, trying to spin it in a way that would confuse the jury. They attempted to create a new narrative, suggesting that the mysterious man could have been involved, that maybe Emma had run off with him. But the prosecution was ready. They weren't going to let this twist derail the truth. They countered with their airtight case. Dramatic music began to swell as the tension mounted. The DNA evidence, the final piece of the puzzle, stood firm. The hair, the tissue samples, the contact lens, everything tied Danny Carter to the scene. The defense tried to challenge the DNA, attempting to argue that it could have been from innocent contact. But the prosecution's argument was too powerful to dismiss. It wasn't just about the DNA. It was about everything else. The lies, the betrayals, the trust that had been shattered. And then, the final twist, something that no one expected. As the defense tried to muddy the waters, the prosecution reminded the jury of the most important fact. Danny Carter had been in Emma's life. He had been trusted by her family. He had been part of their search for her. He had comforted them in their darkest hours. But now the truth was clear. This wasn't just a case about DNA. This was about a man who had infiltrated the very heart of a grieving family, who had used their trust against them, and who had stolen Emma's life from them. The room was thick with tension. The jury sat in silence, reflecting on the gravity of the case. This wasn't just about legalities. This was about betrayal, about shattered trust, about a community forever scarred by the actions of one man. And as the final arguments were made, as the last pieces of the case fell into place, it became clear. Danny Carter's fate was sealed. No amount of defense could change the truth. He was guilty, not just of murder, but of destroying a family, a community, and an innocence that could never be returned. The courtroom fell into a heavy silence as the closing statements were made. Stay tuned as we take you through the verdict and the final chapters of this chilling story. The room was thick with tension as the jury filed back into the courtroom. The silence was deafening, the weight of what was about to happen pressing down on everyone present. The jury had deliberated for what felt like an eternity, but now the moment of truth had arrived. All eyes were on the foreman as the judge prepared to read the verdict. We, the jury, find the defendant, Danny Carter, guilty of first-degree murder. The words echoed through the courtroom, sending a shockwave of mixed emotions through everyone present. The room was silent for a moment, the gravity of the decision hanging in the air. Danny Carter, once a trusted neighbor, a man who had once comforted the grieving Harris family, now stood convicted of the most horrific crime imaginable. The Harris family, Grace, Lily, and Aaron, sat frozen, their emotions too raw, too complex to express in a single moment. This was the justice they had fought for, the justice they had been waiting for. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. Grace's eyes filled with tears, the weight of 16 years of pain, uncertainty, and loss crashing down on her all at once. She had fought so hard for this moment, but now that it was here, it felt like a hollow victory. "It's over," she whispered softly, more to herself than anyone else. But she's still gone. Lily, still reeling from the trauma of losing her sister, sat beside her mother, her hands clenched tightly together. There was relief in her eyes, yes, but it was mixed with the deep sorrow that had been part of her life for so long. She hadn't had the chance to grow up with Emma, and now that Emma's murderer had been caught, the finality of the situation hit her like a ton of bricks. Aaron, standing to the side, looked down at the floor. His face, hardened by years of grief and distance, betrayed no emotion at first. But as the verdict sank in, the facade cracked. A single tear fell down his cheek. For so long he had buried his feelings, locked them away in the darkness. But now there was no holding back. The years of sorrow, the lost time with his daughter, the broken marriage, everything came flooding back. The Harris family had waited so long for this moment. They had prayed, they had begged, they had done everything in their power to find Emma's killer. And now, after so much pain and so many false leads, they had the closure they needed. But it wasn't enough to heal the wound that had been left in their hearts. Emma would never come back. Her laughter, her smile, her presence, those would never be replaced. The press conference that followed was the next chapter in this story. The community that had followed Emma's case for so long now had answers. But the answers, as much as they were needed, only served to remind them of the darkness that had been hiding in their midst. Detective Sarah Mitchell stood at the podium, flanked by the Harris family. Her expression was one of quiet determination, the weight of years of hard work finally paying off. She had never given up on this case, even when it seemed like everyone else had. But even now, after the verdict, there was no sense of victory in her voice, only relief. "Justice has been served today," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "But let us not forget that the real loss here is Emma Harris. No amount of punishment can ever bring her back. Our hearts go out to the Harris family, who have shown incredible strength and resilience throughout this entire ordeal." The press, cameras flashing, bombarded the family with questions. But the Harris family remained silent, their heads bowed, their emotions too overwhelming to articulate. They had heard the verdict. They had waited for this day. But it was hard to feel the weight of justice when the one thing they wanted most, Emma, was still gone. As the press conference continued, the reporters' voices faded into the background. The real story was unfolding in the Harris family's hearts. They were free in a sense. The truth had been revealed, and Emma's murderer had been brought to justice. But the scars would never fade. For Grace, for Lily, for Aaron, this verdict was just the beginning of a new journey, a journey of trying to heal from a pain that would never fully go away. As they walked away from the podium, the camera captured the family in a final moment. Grace leaning into Lily, both of them supporting each other in silence. The world outside would move on, the case would fade into history, but for the Harris family, the pain would never truly end. In the coming days, the community of Tarrant County would process the impact of this case. Neighbors, friends, and even strangers were left to grapple with the knowledge that someone they had trusted for years had been living a lie. Danny Carter had once been a part of their lives. He had once been a trusted figure. But now, he was the face of betrayal, and the community was left to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. For the Harris family, the journey to healing had just begun. They had fought for justice. They had found answers. But the loss would always linger. As we close today's story, let us remember Emma Harris, not just as a victim, but as a symbol of the relentless pursuit of truth. Her family's strength, the community's support, and the power of justice are what we can take from this heartbreaking chapter. Emma's name, her memory, and the justice her family fought for will live on. Remember, justice may take time, but it is always worth the fight. We'll be back with more true crime stories. Until then, keep searching for the truth, and never stop seeking justice. Now that we've reached the verdict, I want to take a moment to say how grateful I am to all of you who have supported the channel so far. These true crime investigations take time and dedication, and it's your unwavering support that helps me bring these stories to life. If this story has gripped you like it has me, hit that like button to show your support for Emma's family and for justice being served. If you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Join the community of mystery lovers who believe justice always finds its way. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this story, and make sure they understand just how important it is to never give up on the truth. And don't forget, the notification bell is your golden ticket to be the first to watch every new gripping case. Let's keep these conversations going, and keep uncovering the truth together. As we reflect on the tragic case of Emma Harris, we're reminded of something far larger than just one terrible crime. This is a story of heartbreak, betrayal, and the lengths we'll go to for justice. But it's also a reminder of the relentless power of technology and persistence. It's easy to think of cold cases as closed chapters, unsolved mysteries tucked away in archives, forgotten by time. But Emma's case shows us something different. It shows us that even when hope seems lost, technology can open new doors. It can breathe life back into a case, and with it, a chance for truth. It's a reminder that, no matter how much time has passed, the pursuit of justice is never in vain. But there's a darker lesson hidden within this story too. While technology helped bring Emma's killer to justice, it also exposed the fragility of trust. Danny Carter, a man who had been part of Emma's life, had gained her family's trust. He had even helped search for Emma, comforted them in their darkest moments. And yet, beneath that helpful exterior, there was a dangerous obsession, a secret, twisted side that no one saw coming. When you trust someone, you don't expect them to become the monster hiding in plain sight. You don't expect the very people you rely on to turn on you in such a cruel way. This is the horrifying psychological aspect of this crime. Why would someone do this? Why would Danny Carter, a man who seemed like a friend, betray that trust so violently? Was it a fleeting obsession, a moment of madness, or was it something much deeper? We may never fully understand what pushed Danny to do what he did, but one thing is clear. His actions left a lasting, irreparable scar on the Harris family. For Grace, Lily, and Aaron, justice didn't erase the pain of losing Emma. No sentence could ever bring her back. The emotional toll of those years of searching, of false hope, of never knowing what happened to their daughter, it never truly fades. Emma's story is a tragic example of how dangerous our relationships can be. Those closest to us, the ones we trust most, can be the ones who cause us the deepest hurt. It's a reminder that no matter how well we think we know someone, there's always the potential for betrayal, lurking just beneath the surface. So, as we close the book on this case, we're left with a question. What do we take from it? What can we learn from Emma's story? It's not just about justice, it's about the value of trust, the resilience of a family, and the enduring power of truth, no matter how long it takes to uncover it. Do you think justice was served in this case? Did the truth finally set Emma's family free, or will the scars of her loss always remain? What lessons do you think we can learn from Emma's story, and what impact do you think it has on how we see trust in our own lives? Let us know your thoughts below, And make sure to subscribe for more gripping true crime stories. We'll be back next week with more unsolved mysteries. But for now, take a moment to think about Emma's legacy and the strength her family showed in the face of an unimaginable loss. Thank you for watching, and remember, justice is always worth fighting for, no matter how long it takes.